Today's video, we're going to talk about understanding frequency. And this is sort of a beginner's guide to understanding frequency and what that means. Let's get to it. Hello, my name's Todd, and on this channel we tried to talk about all things music that is helpful to just normal people, for casual onlookers who are just interested in music, and for developing musicians who want to know more about the things that make up music, composition, acoustics, all sorts of different things here. And today we're going to talk a little bit about frequency. I think frequency is often misunderstood in what it means and how you use it. So when we're going to talk about frequency, frequency often is defined into lower notes going up to higher notes. So lower notes being down here and higher notes being up here. You can hear the difference in pitch. But each of these frequencies, from low to mid to high, have some different weird characteristics that we want to get into. So frequency, it just means that what the pitch of the instrument is. So here is a C, and also here is an A. Often when you tune up with an orchestra or a band or something, you'll hear about, are we tuned to A440? This is an A just below middle C. And when they say 440, what that means is 440 hertz. And hertz is just another word for frequency or cycles. And so when we talk about frequency, we're talking about a sound wave. So if you look at this graph here, it shows a single sound wave, and you'll see that it goes up and it goes down. And so what that means is that one cycle goes up and down, the positive and the negative. That'll go up and down once to create one cycle. So to create specific number of pitches, that cycle will repeat so many times per second. So for a A440, that means that cycle, that sound wave, repeats 440 times in 1 second to generate this pitch. So that's what's meant by 440. The low string on a bass guitar, that is at 40 hertz, and that pitch would be, I think that's a little too high. So this would be 40 hertz. So that's pretty darn low at that point. So these sound waves are specific length, and that low E string, that low E is 40 hertz. A 40 hertz sound is actually, the sound wave for it is actually 28 feet long. Let's take a look at that. So with a bass guitar, you actually have a 40 hertz cycle. And a 40 hertz cycle is a low bass guitar E string. Sounds like this. And the length of that cycle is 28 feet, from that dash down there to up to here. From there, what we can understand about frequency is that every time you double that frequency, you go up an octave. So your low E string, which is at 40 hertz, if you hit an octave up, that's going to be 80 hertz. And if you go up another octave, that's going to be 160 hertz. And up another octave, that's going to be 320 hertz. So every time you go up an octave, it's going to go ahead and double that frequency. Now, if you take a look at this 31 band EQ, it has all these sliders that go all the way across the front. And you use a 31 band equalizer to often even out the sound, because frequently you will have certain sounds on a given instrument in a room that are more resonant than other frequencies, and you'll want to either boost some of those frequencies or cut them. And you do that with the 31 band EQ, and you use the little sliders that you see here, and you'll either boost or cut those frequencies to make that happen. And the effect of that, when you're adjusting things, it'll either make things, when you adjust any of these frequencies, if you move the sliders on the right side, which are all your trebly frequencies, if you cut those, it's going to make things sound a lot more boomier. And then if you go ahead and boost those things, it's going to make everything sound a lot brighter. Now you'll notice I did that with my voice, and I can make adjustments with my voice to make it brighter or darker. And the same is the case when you add EQ. It'll make things either brighter or darker or boomier when you do that. Another couple things about frequency. There's some interesting characteristics about frequency depending on high or low. Treble frequencies, they are very directional. In other words, they'll move in one direction and they don't tend to bend a lot. They can, and they do somewhat, depending on if you have a loudspeaker and it has a cone that's shaped like this, it's going to aim directionally out this way. So inside of that range, so that the horn is actually pointing, the sound will go that direction. But the problem with high frequencies is that it's not very good about going around things. So if it runs into something, it doesn't go around those objects very well. And again, depending on the type of material we're talking about, whether it be something very absorbative like a mesh, fabric, fiberglass, those frequencies will just come to a halt and you won't be able to hear them, and it won't go around that. Now on the other side, you've got your low frequencies. Now low frequencies are very, very different in that they're omnidirectional. So when they leave a speaker, they can go out and they can move around corners, they'll go around rooms, and often, like if you're around the corner from a rock concert happening, there's a street concert going on and there's bands at the end of the block, you'll often hear the low bass drum, the bass guitar, you'll hear that stuff before you hear the rest of the band if you're a block or so away, because that bass information can travel around corners, it just goes everywhere. And it's very pervasive. It will go through materials that treble frequencies won't. And so in that instance, when we talk about things like recording studios have to build their studios in a very specific way so that they can go ahead and make the control room, the room where the people who are recording the music can only hear what's going on through their speakers and not through the wall. So in that instance, in a recording studio, they will do things such as they'll take walls, and most walls are parallel, but in the instance of using things like glass and regular walls, they'll make them not parallel, or so they're more like this, just slightly, and that way the frequency, low frequency information specifically, won't go through. If it's parallel, it can travel straight through glass, it can travel straight through walls, but they'll go ahead and just make those slightly off parallel, and it'll make it so that that frequency will bounce off and not go through. And additionally, between walls, they'll use materials such as fiberglass and other dense soft materials, and they'll call them bass traps, to trap all that bass information so that the engineer on the other side of the glass is only hearing the speakers so that he can mix a good clean mix with not hearing any interference from what's going on in the recording studio. So that's pretty cool. So it's interesting to hear how frequencies work and some of the characteristics, how they are. We continue to talk about some of these different elements, these topics, under the umbrella about acoustics. So the question of the day: what interesting things have you heard about acoustics and frequency? And could you share that in the comments below? Well, we're glad you're here today. Please put your comments below, subscribe, the button below, hit the bell if you're the first time here, and we'll see you next time.